Hello students. So in today's lecture we will discuss about the biodiversity, that is last topic of our third chapter. So I will start with it. So what is biodiversity? So basically biodiversity is nothing but the different number or the different, or we can say different variables or number of species present on our planet. So definition for the biodiversity is, it can be defined as the variability and variety of life on our planet. That means variable and variety of life present on our planet, which includes the different ecosystem, as we have studied in last PPT, different types of ecosystem, then different species and the genetics. That means ecosystem consists of different number of species, and that variety of species is known as the biodiversity. So the level of biodiversity usually increases with the increase in the temperature. Okay, for example, the world's tropical rainforest cover around 10% of the planet's surface but contain 90% of all species on the planet. So rainforest area covers 90% of all the species present on our planet, but the area it covers is only 10%. That means in small amount of land there is a variety of number of different species. Then the value of biodiversity. So the value of biodiversity is nothing but what we can get from this biodiversity. So that is direct value and indirect values. So consumptive and productive usage, in that we will get food resources and the other resources from the biodiversity. In food resources we will get grains, different vegetables, fruits, as we'll get it from different plants, or we can say it from the plant species. So fruits, nuts, tea, coffee, tobacco, oil. Then from different animal species we will get meat, then fish, egg, then milk, honey, etc. Then from the other plant resources we will get the raw materials for different medicines, which is used for the pharmaceutical purposes. Then we will get fuel, which is which we will get from different plants, as this plant fuel will get from different plant. Then timber, household accessories, fiber, fertilizers, wool, leather, paint, resin, wax, rubber, silk, feather, decorative items, etc. So for example we'll get fuel from different plant. That means जैसे कि डिफरेंट प्लांट्स जब भी अर्थक्वेक आता है या फिर कुछ और ऐसा नेचुरल डिज़ास्टर, तो उसकी वजह से जो प्लांट होते हैं वो ज़मीन के अंदर दब जाते हैं. सो ऐसा बहुत सालों बाद जब भी वो नीचे रहेगा तो उससे हम लोग को फ्यूल मिलता है. So that's why. Then next one is the indirect value. So that is non-consumptive usage. So for example, carbon fixing through photosynthesis, which provide the support system for species. That means in photosynthesis process plant absorbs the CO2, that is carbon dioxide present in the environment, and it releases the oxygen, which is very essential for the human beings. So that's why we'll get the oxygen from the different plant species. Then pollination and gene flow. Next one is maintaining water cycle, recharging groundwater and protecting watersheds. Next one is buffering from climatic extreme conditions such as flood and drought. Next one is soil production and protection from erosion. Then next one, maintaining essential nutrient cycle, for example carbon cycle, oxygen cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle and sulfur cycle, as we have seen this in last PPT. Next one is absorbing and decomposing pollutant, organic waste, pesticides, air and water pollutants. Next one is regulating climate at both macro and micro level. And next one is preserving recreational, then aesthetic, socio-cultural, scientific, educational, ethical, and historical values of natural environment. Then next one, why this biodiversity is important. So the reason behind why it is important. So the first is one, it provides a variety of plant species. So as we can say biodiversity in plant means different species of the plant. So as we are able to get different species of plant, farmers are able to grow different amount, different or the variable crops. So that's why we'll get more food resources from different plant species. So that's why this biodiversity is important. Then the next one is the ecosystem balance. So ecosystem, it provide biodiversity provides the balance in the ecosystem, as there is number of different species, then they form the food chain and the food web. So each animal, or we can say plant, is each animal is depend on the other animal, or we can say depends on the plant, and they are connected and they depends on each other. So it will create a complete balance in the ecosystem. The next one is the freshwater resources. So for example, different microorganisms and the other creatures are responsible for assuring the fresh water in the ground. The next one is the nutrient storage. For example, different we can say different bacteria are responsible, or different plant species are responsible to store the nutrients in the soil. So that's why this is very very important. Then next one is the soil formation. So different bacteria, or we can say different microorganisms are responsible for the formation of soil, and they also assures that the mineral values are also present in the that soil. Then breaking down pollutant. So as we can say different bacteria are present which are responsible for decomposing the different items, or the different animals or the plant species, and that's why they are able to control the pollutants in the environment. Then the next one is the food resource. So as different number of animal and plant species is available, it will get more number of food and the resources. For example, for veg and non-veg, so different number of species will get very high amount of variety available for food. Then climatic stability. So same, for example, photosynthesis process is responsible for the uh, absorption of CO2, and which will able to stable our climate condition. Then sustain recreation areas. So recreational areas is nothing but the areas where plants and different animals are uh, able to produce their next generation. So these are the recreational areas where the animals or the plant species can rest, and they are able to recreate their version. So that's why biodiversity is important. Then source of drugs. So as we have already seen, different plants are used in ayurveda for the generation of different medicals, so for production of different medicals, medicines. So these are used in the pharmaceutical processes. So that's why these are the reasons why biodiversity is important for all of us. The next one is the threats to the biodiversity. So, what are the threats, or what are the causes for loss in that biodiversity? So, these are the different causes: drought, flood, wildfire, earthquake, then position in food chain. So, we'll see one by one. So, drought is nothing but the condition that is lack of water. So as we will know, as we know that water is very essential for each and every animal and each and every plant present on our planet. So if there is a lack of water, the plant or animal species are not able to survive, and then eventually it will threaten our biodiversity. It will threaten the ecosystem, and that in turn affects the biodiversity. Same way flood. uh, so as we know that a lack of water is also a problem, then excess water is also problem. Excess water also creates the problematic situation for the different animals and different plants. So that's why flood is also causing the problem to the biodiversity. Then wildfires. So wildfires contains a large amount of forest area, so it will destroy the large amount of different plants and different animals. So different animals will lose their natural habitat due to this wildfire, and they will lose their food resources, and that's why they will not able to sustain in that environment and they will die, and that's in turn affects the ecosystem, and which in turn affects the biodiversity. The next one is earthquake. So same, all these are the reasons which are responsible for the loss in biodiversity. Then the position in food chain. So as food chain is nothing but the different animals present on each other in for their food resources. So as one is not able to sustain, the other animal which depends on that will also not able to sustain in that ecosystem, and which in turn affects the biodiversity. Then degree of specialization. Degree of specialization is nothing but the we can say it as a more specialized species. So as the species is more specialized, and if it will not able to sustain in such a environment, then it will affects the entire ecosystem. Then destruction of habitat. So same as because of flood or the wildfire or the earthquake, if their natural habitat is destroyed, then that animals or that plants are not able to get their resources, and they will die, and it will affect the ecosystem. Then excessive pollution. So due to the pollution, whether it may be air, water, or the soil pollution, the different animals and the different plant species are not able to sustain in that environment, and it will create loss to the ecosystem, which in turn cause loss into the biodiversity. Then overconsumption. So overconsumption, that means if we overconsume certain resources, so we'll overconsume these resources for the production of different products, and these products require the raw material which is coming from the forest resources, for example. So if we overconsume that product, then that resources will be overconsumed and they will destroy. So that's why this overconsumption of different products by the human beings is very is causing the threat to the biodiversity. Then climate change, hunting, overexploitation, conflicts, and invasive species. So, as you know, hunting and overexploitation, then climate change, we have discussed it previously also. But next one is the invasive species. So, what is invasive species? Is nothing but the specialized species introduced in their local environment. So, if this invasive species destroy the local species, then it will be very harmful for the ecosystem, which in turn affects the biodiversity. So these are all the reasons which affects the biodiversity. Then effects of biodiversity loss. That means if this different reasons causing the loss to the biodiversity, then what will be the effects of this biodiversity loss on different conditions? So what is the ecological effect? So ecological effect, that means the loss of biodiversity has severe effect on our ecological system, since our planet has a natural system and species depends on each other. So losing a small number of species can lead to a big ecological effect which affects the whole ecosystem. Then spread of diseases. So due to loss of bio ecosystem, or due to loss of biodiversity, for example bacteria are not present, then it will the system will not able to decompose the different animals which have already died. So because of their loss of the bacteria, these animals which are not able to decompose, so it will spread different diseases, so which in turn cause loss to the different animals also and the human beings also, which in turn affects the biodiversity. Then loss of livelihood for locals. So as their natural habitat is destroyed due to different human activities, so it will lose their natural habitat, and it will create the loss for the livelihood, whether it is plant species or whether it is the animal species. Then loss of recreational space, same, due to loss of the natural system, it will create loss to recreational space. They will not able to get the space where they can rest, where the animal can rest and they can able to regenerate or they recreate their new species. Then society effect. So it will create a loss to our society also. For example, we'll use different number of nowadays we will using smartphones, computers and electronic stuff. So all these components require use of different materials from the uh, forest or different natural resources, and excessive use of it may cause the lost connection with the natural our natural environment, as we are busy in our laptops or our smartphones. We are not able to connect with our natural system, we are not able to connect with our nature, and which will affects our society. Then effects on food production. So as biodiversity loss, different animals and plant species loss, so we'll not able to get the amount of food required, and which turns affects the food production process. Then economic effect. So due to the loss of food production and due to loss of different forest, so we'll not able to export different plant and different products available from these plants or animals, so it will affect our economic system. So these are the effects of this biodiversity loss. Then next one is the hotspot of biodiversity. So hotspot of biodiversity is nothing but the areas where different species are present which are on the process of the extinction. That means these are the areas where different animal and plant species are present which are on the way of the extinction. So that's why it is known as the hotspot of biodiversity. So in India, there are two hotspots of the biodiversity, that is Northeast Himalayas and the Western Ghats. So you will get the complete idea about different plants and different animal species in this PPT. So read it carefully. Then biodiversity assessment initiatives in India. So that is nothing but what are the initiatives taken by our country to save this biodiversity. So the subcontinent has 10 biogeographically zones. That means different zones are created. That is Trans Himalaya, Indian Desert, Semi-arid, Western Ghats, Deccan Peninsula, Gangetic Plains, Northeast India, Island and Coast. So Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India has launched a project known as National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. So this project is it investigates the assessment and stock taking of biodiversity related information at the various levels. So it will The feature of this project is it will include the emphasis on decentralized planning and the use of interdisciplinary working groups to involve all sectors concerned with the biodiversity conservation. Then conservation of biodiversity. So in situ conservation and ex situ conservation are the two types for the conservation. So what is mean by in situ and ex situ? So in situ is nothing but the areas where it is already present, different biodiversity is already present and we have to save it. And ex situ is nothing but we have to create the areas that is which is not natural. We have to create it for the conservation of the biodiversity. So the aim and objective of wildlife management in India includes the following: protection of natural habitat, maintenance of a variable number of species, establishment of biosphere reserves, and protection through legislation. Then some of the NGOs, that is non-government organizations working in this direction, are Bombay Natural History Society, Wildlife Preservation Society of India, Dehradun, and Worldwide Fund for Nature India. Then solution to the biodiversity loss problem, that is nothing but again same conservation to the biodiversity. So these are the points that is actually discussing how we can able to provide this conservation. So first one is the government restriction and policies. So government has to make certain regulation, for example on hunting or fishing. Government has to pay some restriction on that so that we are able to save different animal species and the fisheries. Then education, so we have to educate our child so that they can realize the exact problem and they will also connect with the nature from their child life also, and then they are able to provide the solution. Then protection of species, so we have to protect some of these species uh, which are on the road of extinction, on the way of extinction. Then protection of habitat, so we have to protect our natural habitat or the animals natural habitat so that they are able to sustain in that environment, otherwise they will not able to sustain and it will create the loss to the biodiversity. Then we have to stop the deforestation. Then we have to prevent overhunting and overfishing, prevent species invasion, then stop pollution, stop overexploitation of resources. We have to save energy, as energy we will get the energy from this fuel we will get from different plant species, and that's why we have to save it. Then we have to stop the overconsumption and we have to convince others also so that they also can recognize the problem, and the people will also able to connect with the natural system. So these are the measures how we can provide uh, how we can save our biodiversity. The next one is the different laws governing the biodiversity conservation in India. So these are the different laws which are made by our country for conservation of this biodiversity. So just go through it, and from next onwards we will start with our next chapter, that is unit 4. So in that unit 4 we have already studied half of its chapter, that means unit 4 का half chapter तो हम लोगों ने पहले ही cover किया है, that is in pollution, that is in first chapter only. So you will refer those PPT for this unit 4 first part, and then half of the part of the unit 4 will start with next PPT. Okay, thank you.